ile komberewa nora hetatu natu bali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
Fraud.
Not fraud, it's a scandal. Why do you give a tender to somebody who does not have capacity to build? Why should you do that? You know a person that does not have the capacity to build.
Eagle FM lets you talk.
That's why I'm always telling people in Parliament, let me not take up my Katatura manners.
Right.
Because I grew up in Katatura. And I will not hesitate to tell you off if it is needed to do.
Be part of the debate by setting the agenda.
My response in terms of Rwanda at 6% is that we had been there before. We've had 6% growth before. It's not something that Namibia has not achieved in the past, and it's not something that Namibia will not be able to achieve in the future.
Eagle FM, the eye.
Lipuranenge no wapumbwa eva tere ulikoni maondo tuto ingida ashike kapeno nweko tite opoye ekukulile. Oshafafana nongeshe faili mehola mo iho etike kovano ile koshiwana. Onongeshe fa yapumbwa kukaraya kovano. Okupitiramo Eagle FM otuna ebitoda njuka okukwetera oipindi konu kondado inawa nuneudo otukwetera o special ngeta shake ngeshefa omarudi dayo loka opone ushendi fenawa nokumona oijamoiri nawa ninge kwata fanona monika ko Eagle FM onora etatu imwe mbali heali nola natu heali mbali no heali ile komberewa nora hetatu natu mbali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
Good afternoon and welcome to Oluwazi. It's a Monday and I'm hoping you all had a good weekend, but and we are back to starting over a new week and also a new month. But as you know it's every Monday we don't just hop into home run. We start with Oluwazi before we switch to home run. And what is Oluwazi? If you just tuned in, you know how every discipline has its own language. And if you are one of those people that are confused by what goes on in the in the language of the property market, not just when it comes to selling and buying, but also the regulations that comes with that. That's what Mr. Nishila is here to shine a light on that for those of us that don't speak property lingo. Mr. Nishila, good afternoon.
Good afternoon and good afternoon to the listeners. Once again, welcome to the Uluwazi Eagle FM show, your Monday thought-provoking program. On the menu today, basically, we still want to continue and basically enlighten the statement from the former governor of Oshana region, Mr. Irimari, and how he highlighted the Ongwediva or Shakati issue as a merger. Also, what emerged from that context, the public opinion is more aligning that perhaps Ondangwa and Onipa must be the guinea pig to test the waters as to see what are the dynamics in merging the two local authority. It's quite a very interesting thing, and where the minister allegedly also gave a statement to say that he hasn't seen anything on paper, hence he's unable to comment to such. Once he has something on paper, he will then be able to comment and to give his view on that perspective. On the other side of the news, we then come to the capital city, where a prominent activist lawyer made a very bold statement. It gave us strategic numbers as to what is the rent per room, where areas such as Hakaana, they were earmarked for 1,500 per room, while the most expensive one per room is the central area, which is at 5,000. I think Komasdal is at 2,000 and 2,500 and so forth. So again, it's purely the outcry into the public domain. We now actually also then there was another article, I can't remember the gentleman also who made the statement around the affordability of the properties, whereby there was a follow-up, very strong comment from one of prominent economists who then states that as much as we talk about affordability and so forth, the critical issues, the job, is the job creation opportunities that are not there for the young people, and it's purely based on the unemployment factor. Now, that is now basically the general news around the property market between Saturday and today. So we just want to keep you on par as to what is really happening on the day-to-day basis and what is happening in the space of development, the concerns of the public opinion, so that you are well informed and to be able to make informed decisions. Now, what we have, our major discussion for today is Rule 108. That is one of the judges' outcome to regarding the property issue. Now, maybe perhaps before we extend on Rule 108, as much as it's a very much a conveyance expert alignment, but at certain section and aspects that builds up to it. Now, if you live in the city of Windhoek and you own a property somewhere, Windhoek West, Windhoek North, so you will see that when you are applying for a rezoning application where you want to build offices, you have an option to live on your property, which the city of Windhoek then calls it the free residential bulk, basically giving you permanent residency. Now, it gives you permanent residency, and it also then gives you primary ownership. And basically now but yet again, as zone as office, but it gives you primary ownership on the free residential bulk. So meaning that it also becomes your primary residence. Now the question is, if in such a case, when we start looking at the application of Rule 108, now the question is what then becomes primary, or what does the law allow in to say this is a primary residential? Is it because of the zoning certificate, or is it of the primary use or on the basis, or is it a mixed use? So now the Urban and Regional Planning Act and the Windhoek zoning scheme makes provision for mixed use application, meaning that you can stay at the property as your primary residence, and it can also be your place of work if you are especially into consulting or running a doctor's practices, anything of activity of a business nature that is not obnoxious. Now, I'm just trying to give a bit of context to the listeners in terms of how to look at and to be able to unpack the Rule 108. Now, subsequent to the effect of Rule 108 is that irrespective that, yes, a judgment can be given or is given, however, because we do not have the regulations in place, for the valuers, for the Council of Valuers is still not in operation because the regulations has not been gazetted yet, is still yet with the legal drafters. The act is complete. The council has been appointed by the minister, but the regulations are not finalized. So meaning that the act is not fully operational, active. It's partially. They are still setting up those aspects. Now, when you look at, for you to trigger Rule 108, obviously the sheriff or the deputy sheriff needs to appoint a valuer. So on the primary residence, for it to give a valuation based on market value. Now, what is also now going to become tricky, you will see that if you have paid off your property, say for 10 years, meaning that you have now paid the principal debt of your property. Now, usually your property appreciation after your principal debt, it appreciates round about, say, after 15 years. That is when you start seeing real value bringing a bit of return. But even with those, anything above, slightly above the 10 years, your figure is going to still remain. It's purely going to be you're literally handing over the property to back to for it to start another new 20-year cycle. But it's also
that's before it starts appreciating.
Yeah, that's now when it starts appreciating. You see, property, mostly you will only see the dividends in your starting from 10 years. It's a long-term investment.
Yeah.
So, however, depending now, if you have done approvals onto the properties, you then change the building rights. There is an appreciation factor of between 10 to 20% increase. And on top of, because now you have giving it additional building rights depending on the location of the property. Again, for me, location becomes very critical. Now, as we are pushing further, and I just want so that you better understand Rule 108 as to what future implications that it will have. Now, currently, there is a policy that is being drafted by the city of Windhoek. It's not yet been finalized. It's still under discussion. It's still not yet into the public domain, but there is a discussion around corner properties. Now, corner properties are going to get special rights. So meaning that if you have a corner property, you're going to be able to get special rights. So meaning that they will allow you to run a business, and also equally so that you also live on the premises. There is residential occupancy. So here now we are also going to get business occupancy. I'm speaking under correction, but I just, for the purpose of understanding, trying to build context around it. Now again, it then comes, obviously you need to do the necessary adjustments and applications, but then again, the bone of contention as it's basically as your primary residency, and that is basically now where everything is alluding to. Now, currently, because of Rule 108, it becomes now very difficult for properties to be auctioned. The space has become very difficult. There's some serious backlog. But then, yet again, we shouldn't look at the symptoms because of what is currently happening. It is a historical losses that we are encountering for. So obviously now we are going to feel the pinch between obviously the lender, and currently now 108 is more in favor of the general public. So that is basically where and for less properties are getting onto the market to be auctioned off, but of which in terms of mortgage practices, I'm fully in agreement with Rule 108. Because if you have a lot of properties that are being auctioned, so basically we are moving into a speculation space, yeah. So once you then move in a speculation space, you then start creating market distortions. Now, once you start having market distortion, that means that anyone who's selling property in close proximity, let me say that the properties have been auctioned off, and let's say the property was bought for say 3.8 million, and then it got auctioned off for 1.5 million. So that becomes the market value. So you cannot erase the market value. So that is basically what it means, irrespective whether it will be a forced value or whatever you call it. So obviously now when you start doing your comparable in that close, and only the auction property is in close proximity, basically that means that it will have a knock-on effect on the property that you want to sell on the market. So you would then end up to prolong your investment in selling until such then this properties, there's new data that is coming to the forth. So, and these are also the aspect, as much as that the lender feels very much affected, but also the judgment also equally so protect the market value, and it's keeping it purely intact in that space. So there are underlying factor in this space. So, and it's very important that this aspects needs to be really unpacked. Yes, the legal oversight of things perhaps has not been considered, as the statesmen are alluding to, but there is a protection aspect to the property owner. Now, what Rule 08 also is making provision that if you are unable to afford your property, you can then submit a an affidavit or any written form, then to be able to say that my cousin will be able to afford it, and then is going to pay the lease, and then that aspect it becomes then binding. So there is assistance that can apply in that space. That family will be able then to transfer debt in a form of a lease, irrespectively. Now, it also then gives protection to, irrespective whether you have a lease but you are at the premises. So you will also then give an opportunity to be able to defend yourself. Yeah. Now, yes, there is a good side and there is a bad side on it. I was involved in a case whereby I've leased out a property. The lease have expired. The tenant was not paying. I then said, but it's a bit unfair. You can't do this, and the tenant has not paid. So I received a court order because I acted out of frustration. Then I received a court order. So once you receive a court order, you then tend to cease your ownership right to access the premises, or due because of that court order, until such then that a judgment has been given. So obviously, in that case, you now, because when you've been issued of the court order, the legal fees is then imposed on you as the property owner, irrespective that the person was not paying. So that means then you become liable for those legal costs. The next thing you will see, one of your items have been attached, yes, and you have to incur that legal aspect. So it depends on which position you are at the time. Yeah, but the law needs to be fair, and it also needs to protect the vulnerable. So irrespective of how the perception as to how we look at it, but because we are in a nature, the market economy space where we are, that is predominant, very much profit driven based on our approach and development aspects. So it's always going to be a question. It's always going to be a question as to it's look into the profit aspect. Now, there's a lot of underlying issue, and there's a lot of legislation or operational changes that are happening in the commercial sector in that space. So, but yet that again, I think the cycle is more on the property owner, the buyer side at the moment. That is where more the leverage and the anchor is leaning to. It's to protect. So obviously the lender and the landlords they are slightly on the negative footing. But obviously once you have such a law in place or such a judgment in place, so obviously it also affects the way of doing business. So it will also affect the way of trying or giving occupancy to anybody in that space. But also it then gives the confidence for people to buy property because they feel protected. Yeah. So we are moving into a space of market uncertainty in terms of job security due to artificial intelligence. Now, AI basically has a major knock-on effect on very much office-based professions, because a lot of that is going to be automated. The lenient companies or that are having a big workflow, obviously they look at their register and to say, okay, fine, in the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to have this number of vacancies so we are having, say, 20% of the staff in 5 years' time will reach the age of 60. And obviously then you then makes provision for AI then to come in. But that's only a certain number of a certain number of employees. It's not everyone that will be able to do that. So obviously, if your operational cost exceeds your ratio, so you will have to either you trigger retrenchment, and after you trigger retrenchment, obviously you need then to deploy your AI tools to be able to aid you into that space. I know this is quite a very sensitive issue. What was done by Social Security when they introduced AI and reintegrated the stuff that were affected by automation? It's because they were on the fortunate side to be able to do that, so that they can redeploy and reskill people. But it's not every business that is able to cope with that. So as time then progresses, there's going to be a serious challenges. For those of you who are in a position with very high job security, you will not really feel the effect of Rule 108 or its benefit, because you are in a space that you feel like you are secured and all that. But the moment you lose your source of income, obviously you then start trigger Rule 108, and for you, you will then see the cost benefit of what the judge's intentions are in terms of to protect the aspect. Now, despite its pros and cons, I think what is important is that we need to look at the market. What is the market behavior? Yes, it's eliminating speculations. It's creating a consumer confidence for people to be able to buy property or people to be able to lease property. There is a sense of protection, and that is a guarantee that any market needs. It will lower the court implications and all that. It will slow it down. So there is a bit of protection into that space. Apart from now looking at it that the mortgage bond is being suppressed, or is that it's not in favor of the lender. So and that is basically the key takeaway in terms of how we are looking at Rule 108. So maybe just to slightly recap on it is to be able to say that it is not a fixed aspect that you need to look at it from one aspect of what is the legal oversight on what the intention is. But you need to look at the entire framework as to what constitute. So there are certain aspects which are in the urban and regional or local authority zoning scheme that has not been considered into that space. So obviously there's going to be new narrative, there's always going to be new writings, but as then times progresses and as court cases brings in new arguments forth to the forefront, it then shed more light as to how we need to frame the legal structure around it. So obviously now you would also then want that the quicker when we discuss this issue, then your rent control bill also equally then comes in, so that we are able to look into it. And then obviously your rent ordinance as well. That also obviously it's also there is an implication to that. And how do these aspects then align? The question is, when you look at, if you do not have a proper now legal oversight, the question is, where was the legal oversight centered, or where was the opinion draw and the idea on this rule, on what effects? What are the? I haven't read the full judgment of Rule 081, but we just want to provide perspective as to how you need to look at it from a panoramic perspective, based on how the land portion has been created, the change of development rights, and then obviously what then constitute, what will come first, Will it be is it the zoning that becomes the ultimate breaker, or is it the mixed use, to say the residence occupancy? Question is primary. What then becomes primary? If it is business, then your business become primary. If you live there, then obviously residence then becomes primary. So I think there is some legal aspects that needs to be considered in this space, so that we are able to make a proper informed decision as to how we are going to unpack it. But as I said, everything still remains vague until such then the Valuers Council is fully operational and the mandates are very clear. The sheriff is very clear on all that. And so there's a lot of underlying factors that has not been considered. But for the general public, I always say that it's important that we are a third world country, and our approach and decision making must be pro-poor. And that is the only way we are able to allow people in the lower segment to be able also to benefit into the country's development. But the moment we are a third world country with first world policies and legislation, it becomes a serious problem. So for me, this is a very critical aspect. And I always in the other show we were discussing it to say, when we discuss policies, it must be pro-poor, but our conferences are grand, and they have all this fancy aspects and all that. So hence it's very important that we need to have this understanding as to how these aspects are imposed. Now, equally so, it further goes on. The court powers have also expanded. Judges can now impose alternative, such as reducing installment and extending repayment terms. So that is also one of the aspects. Now, I don't think that this is wrong. This statement is wrong, because if you have paid off your property for 10 years, and after 10 years you have financial implications, job security issues that you are unable to pay. So obviously you can now either say, I'm going to extend my bond for another 10 years, which you then make it another 20 years. So meaning that now obviously you have paid off your principal. So obviously there is going to be a review in your application if you are then able to pay, and then you can basically, it is just that now the onus is not purely on the stress levels is not only just given to the lender, but also the courts can also determine. So which also then open up another opportunity, and that obviously the rigidness of the lender to say that, but we do not think that you are able to afford in terms of going forward, and hence it's better we seize the property and we then auction it off. So meaning that at the end of the day, the buyer is always in a very precarious position. So so now this alternative aspects, it's as I said, is that we need to look at it from the positive perspective. Yes, I think what do they say? The Lord
balance of probability.
What is unjust must be just, and what is unfair must be fair. So it's a balancing act. So when you look at the one of the legal I said the logo, or I don't know what you call it, instrument, you see there's a scale, there's always a scale hanging.
Like a seesaw.
Yes, So, and it's never one is below, or it's always, you can see it's in balance, it's in equilibrium. So and I think we need to look at it from that perspective. But obviously it will also then be good so that we have a lawyer on the show so that they can give their legal opinion around around this matter as to how they perceive it, and then also have another a financial expert on the show as to what are the implication in terms of the market condition, and then have an economist. So it's a sequence of professions that should be able to give an opinion so that we better understand Rule 108 as to what is it really trying to tell us, where are we basically heading with this space, what is the intention outcome, or what is perhaps there was a study done of what informed the basis of Rule 108. So we really need to understand it. We need to get to the bottom of it so that there's an equilibrium on different views and perspective. So for me, it's very clear. I said I think it's important that we need to look at into the context of the country. We are a third world country, and I feel like it is a pro-poor. It's a very pro-poor approach because it's having different alternatives, and it's just a brilliant a brilliant aspects of things, and but it's really asking us to really look at different, it's the property issue and the mortgage aspect is forever becoming a discussion every week, and there's so much underlying factors, and it's almost a $55 billion market. Our mortgage is a $55 billion. So it really holds gravitas, and it deserves public debate, public discussion. It deserves every aspect and opinion. The public must be informed. Everybody needs to understand this space because it's affecting all of us. It's affecting our future, and obviously it has a heavy social impact aspect to it. So it's very important that we understand this, what it means. We need to interrogate it and to have a very clear perspective. Now, in saying so, your rent control bill needs to come up quickly. Something needs to happen. There must be a decisive decision as to say, are we going to proceed, or are we okay with it? Your regulations for your valuers equally so there needs to be clarity. There needs to be clarity in that space for us to be able to move forward and to be able to implement the act fully. I think the minister must also equally so pronounce itself as to what is the way forward. The rent ordinance, it's outdated. We need to review that and to see what is the best alternative. Or we can simply say, okay, guys, the rent control bill will take. So let's just take the implication factors in the rent ordinance, and we adjust those few aspects of what needs to be adjusted, and so that we are able to move forward. I know previously also there were appointments made for the rent control bill to serve on the board, but nothing came out of it. So, and I think I think government must not shy away. We must just try again. So what we need to do, let's address the plight of the people. Or obviously, there are people that are against the rent control bill. Because they are saying, wherever they've implemented the rent control bill in other countries, it created serious. It didn't work. But then maybe our model is different. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt so that we need to test. If we don't test anything, we won't be able to know whether we are able to make things work. But we need to try. Something needs to be done. Yeah. So we cannot say once a statement comes off, and every time there is an initiative, if there is a public outcry and government respond to public outcry, and there's obviously people that are against it, I think everyone deserves to be heard, and that's what democracy is all about. And everyone needs the chance. So if majority feel they are affected, then I guess I suggest that we need to address it as such. But I don't think government should be cut halfway, not to be able to address this factor. So hence, it's a very, very, very important space where we are moving into now. The subjects are very, very hot. On Saturday, we unpacked Swakopmund and its perspective, how they are developing, what are the social issues. I call Swakopmund in terms of social aspects, cities of class, social class society. That needs to be addressed. How do you address it? Yeah. So does this Rule 108 kind of address that? That confidence. So what does Rule 108 means to a developer, to an entrepreneur? What does it mean? What does it mean for consumer? The appetite, because whatever you purchase, you want to feel secure of your asset. You want to be protected. I'm not saying government is not as doing everything well, but we also just need to appreciate what government is doing, and I think we need to bring those aspects to the forefront. Yeah. So every time there's a positive outcome, it's we don't talk about it, but we always want to talk about if anything bad happens, then we want to raise our voices and all that. But as I said, the government is doing a lot. There's a lot of policies that are being drafted. A lot is happening in the different spaces. We just need to come on board, and all of us to participate in the spaces of development. And when you assess the concerns on youth related matters, especially when it comes to the property aspect, I always say NYC, if someone is out there that is listening on Eagle FM now, NYC needs to come on board. In their strategic plan, there is provision for housing development. So they can use that and voice that, to elevate that voice and create something out of that is able to assess the youth. There is no harm. There is absolutely no harm if we have a policy that then says market value less. If the local authorities are so much willing to assist the youth, we can then say that market value less 20% for the youth. So this way, you then encourage the youth to buy property as quick as possible. So that is only on the land, because on the land, that is where the government and local authority have the leverage to impose such, because the government is the custodian of the land, and the local authorities are managing the land on behalf of government. Yeah, so we can say, and we can have that policy in place that says market value 20% less for the youth. So that means now everyone, if you will then make sure you participate in that 20% less market value as a youth to own a property. Because if you miss that vehicle, you then goes to Champions League, and that is now where the difficulties is. Yeah. So we need to have this incentive policies in place so that we can encourage that. So now, obviously, if we all know that there is such a policy in place, so already if you impose market value 20% less market value, so that means that you are bringing in new new people in the affordability bracket. Now, the moment you then do that, you then also going to increase your middle class. Yeah. So you're going to increase your middle class. So that means that you are having a much stronger buying power in terms of affordability. Yes. So you now have people spending more. They will have more money because there's a reduction of 20%. So these are the initiatives that we can do. But obviously, as government cannot control commodity prices because it cannot dictate that. Yeah, it can impose tariffs, your import tariffs, but it cannot the cost of material. Government have not much of an influence unless also obviously now giving a bit of few levies to be able to cushion down the inflation factor. But on the land issue, market value less 20% for the youth. That is a policy, that is a song that we need to start singing to the leadership so that the youth is able to afford to make land more affordable. So that means that you only basically pay the premium on your top structure. And then on your top structure, if you want a 6-bedroom house, there's nothing much government can do. You pay for what you want. But at least if you government have come forth to give you a market value less 20% on the land issue, I think that is it's fair enough. But as I said, these concepts, they are all in the urban land policy. Provisions are there. The NYC needs to come forth. They need to start championing this discussion. This discussion is for all of us collectively. It's not based on certain individual or certain experts, but it's for us to discuss. And obviously, if you have these things in place, the Rule 108 will not be a threat to the lender, so they also feel comfortable. So obviously now the land cost has been reduced, and that's basically now the subsidy. Now under Ulwazi, we've been discussing this subsidy aspect, that the government is subsidizing housing sector in the lower sector. But when you look at the economic numbers, they don't say that government have subsidized 20% for the past 10 years in Swakopmund or Windhoek or Chivarongo or whatsoever. So the economy just reads numbers. And then we absorb those numbers as to say this is the true value of the market. But yet again, there is a subsidized aspect that is basically coming from the fiscus in terms of what government is doing. So, as I said before, I'm not here. We are giving independent opinion. Yes. Okay, we are not being sponsored. We are just putting things in place. So it's just for people to have an understanding, and for those that have a far better understanding to bring the discussions forth, and we need so that we are able to unpack it. But as I said to you, Rule 108, it's a pro-poor, man. And that is, it's a pro-poor. That is what we need. And that is one of the positive aspects that has come out of that's why Namibia is such a very caring country, and it's just very good to always talk about this positive aspect. So the aspects, the mechanisms are there, the thoughts are there. So all we need to do, we just need to make sure that we are able to unpack this aspect, and to make sure that everyone participates in the development space.
All right. Thank you very much. We have about 9 minutes left. I have a ton of questions.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, earlier on, when you were just giving us an update of what's currently going on in terms of discourse with regards to the property market, you did point out that what's going on is there's somewhat of a debate of whether it's an affordability discussion or the means to access the money to afford the property type of discussion that's going on. So you have you have others that are of the opinion that the property is somewhat unaffordable, and then you have some that are of the opinion that no, this is somewhat of a domino effect of unemployment that is giving this unaffordability component. So it's that, did I understand you correctly? Is that part of the discussion going on in the market?
Yes, yeah, it's part of the discussion.
Yeah.
But also so to be able to unpack the job creation aspect.
Yeah.
I think we need to start from first principles. Yeah, as they say in I'm not an economist.
Yeah.
But we need to look at first principles of development.
Yeah.
In my opinion, is the rural areas.
Yeah.
Now the question is, what can we do for rural areas to be able to benefit? So if you empower the rural community in the communal areas, so you ease the pressure on the urban centers that are attracting. Now the question is, how do you then do that? I really had a discussion. Well, this is not my thought, but it would just be good to share it.
Yeah.
South Korea, what they did is they give business enterprise incentives when you set up in rural areas. So once you set up a factory in a rural area, they will give you tax incentives. Yeah. So
that's
now,
interesting.
Yeah. So the moment you do that, so then and people in the rural areas are all now employed.
Yeah.
It's going to change a different aspect now. Now suddenly there is more rooms for rental.
Yeah.
So the landlords are competing for tenants. The lenders are competing for buyers. So it then kind of you start creating an equilibrium. So, and I think that is where we need to start thinking. I said, how can we take a plant to the rural community where there is infrastructure, where there is a third road, and we said, okay, could you kindly set up in this area? Yeah. So that, and you have seen it, any area in communal areas where you have a school and a clinic, it starts behaving like an urban node kind of. Shop starts to develop around there. So there's a concentrated need of services in such a space. So then obviously transportation then comes in because weekends the learners needs to go home. So there's cross benefits around it. So and that is now something that we need to do. Sometimes we just need to look at our policies. It's not necessarily that we need to pump a youth fund. Yeah. It becomes very it's not sustainable in the long run. But we need to review our first principle in saying let's empower people in communal areas. Yeah. Then we give it 5 years and to see what is the knock-on effect of that decision. Then if it said, okay, where did we go wrong? What more can we improve? Then we segment. So we need to have a 15-year plan to address unemployment. Yeah, we need to have at least a 15-year plan, not a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan. 15 years. So because now, obviously, there's a huge outcry. There's a lot of pressure on government. Government needs to avail capital over capital, capital over capital, and that becomes it's not a sustainable model at all. Yeah. So I think let's give tax incentives and let's send these guys into the rural areas that want to set up new businesses, and we incentivize them. Whether I said, okay, fine, for the next 6-7 years, instead of paying this tax bracket because you set up here, we're giving you this. So now obviously your rural community, they get high scale, get to use the internet much more, So whenever they come to urban centers, they don't feel like they are in an alien space, but they feel like they are part of the ecosystem, Yeah. And that is basically what we need. That's the type of thinking, based on your question, that's how I'm going to rather look at it than to say that, building a lot of houses, I'm not saying it's not a solution, but I think let's focus onto the job creation. But I must say, as a country, yes, we might be 10% bad, but we are doing well. Our systems, our institutions, they are working. They are working. And I think for me, it's just that we need to just find a way that, everything needs to be integrated, and we just need to talk to each other. So for us to be able to unlock the development potential. But other than that, I think we are moving in the right direction.
No, the South Korean example is such a fascinating one that you just pointed out, because I'm just from my limited labor expert and economic point of view, I'm looking at it as it's more than just local content transfer in all over the country in terms of taking incentivized industry expansion into rural areas. Because I'm looking at that as also giving the rural area residents that buying power for them to participate, not just in the property market, but pretty much overall all across the economy.
Yeah, and I think our biggest tool now is the land. Yeah, we really need to look into that on a serious note. And the moment we start to understand the land factor and what 20% could, if a property costs $1 million and you're buying it for 20% less, that's 200,000. Yeah, that's serious money. You can do a lot. You build more liquidity into the market. People are spending more. We will start bringing serious labels also now at restaurants also, and because right now draft on. Not that please, people above 18. Yeah, but yeah. So it's for me that is, when it comes to land, property, and housing issue, that is for me what we need to do. And obviously we also need to take away that the subsidized cost into the market and elevate it to, that is the government input cost. It should be treated differently. So market forces operated market forces, but this one, the subsidized aspect, must remain subsidized. Yeah, and it should not form part of the market value.
Fascinating. We have a short commercial break coming up. We'll just take this break and then sign off on the other side. In case you missed it, don't worry, you can find. In case you missed today's Olwazi, don't worry, you can find it on the Eagle FM app or Eagle FM website. On the other side of the break, stay tuned.
Okay, my turn. Hold on. Just let me finish my story. As I was saying, I was...
My man, you've been finishing your story for 10 minutes now. Even my chassis is getting warm.
Just give more eyes. Anyways, long story short.
Oh, aye. When you're talking, it's a short story long.
Short stories turn long. Go best together with Tassenberg. Not for persons under the age of 18. Enjoy responsibly.
The time is 5 o'clock on the dot. That brings us to the end of today's Olwazi. But I just have two more questions. I think it's something that comes with age. The older you grow, the more you're interested in what's taking place in your political and economic sphere of your country. And that's where I find myself, and hoping that's where you find yourself as well. And in the property market, both from a legislative and economic point of view of what's happening in Namibia, we have Olwazi here to educate you more on that. That is with Mr. Nishil. And Mr. Nishil, before I let you go, just two questions. First one being, you said, you used the word, corner property. Is that in reference to a literal location of the property, as in on the corner, or does it mean something else?
No, it's literally the location of the corner of the property.
So that comes with some advantages, the location itself.
That comes with some advantages, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And on appreciation, you say that if it takes about 10 to 15 years for you to start seeing real appreciation on a property.
Yes. There is. You see, when you buy a property in distress, meaning that you bought it on auction.
Yeah.
So you bought it in distress, and you probably bought it. It's a 3 million property, but you then buy it for 1 million, and you then put it back into the market, and you put it back into the market for 3.5.
Yeah.
So basically, that is basically those are quick gains.
Yeah.
And what the rule basically wants then to say that we need to stop this thing, because otherwise you are going to have speculators, people that I'm not saying it's bad for the economy, but obviously those that are in the upper bracket that have liquidity, they can exploit the market to their advantage, and this is also what you need to appreciate. So because obviously our democracy is also built on sweat equity. I mean, sweat equity means you need to work to earn. It must reward you. But obviously, if you invest in distressed assets, so that's basically it's taking advantage or an opportunity of someone's failure.
Yeah.
So it's my opinion, but
definitely.
Yeah. So it's very important that as I said, it just needs to be fair. Yeah. It just needs to be fair, and then we need to take out the aspects of speculation. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
So people could have different views around it, but yeah, we here to share what we think is more in the best interest of the general public.
All right. All right, Mr. Nishila, thank you very much for that wonderful information on the subject of the property market of Namibia. Your expertise.
No, thank you.
I mean, I find that fascinating.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank you to the listeners. Please, guys, check out our social media pages on Eagle FM on what our next discussion going to be for Saturday, so that we are able to prep you up for the next upcoming town and for you to ask your relevant questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time.
Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
Fraud.
Not fraud, it's a scandal. Why do you give a tender to somebody who does not have capacity to build? Why should you do that? You know a person that does not have a capacity to build.
Eagle FM lets you talk.
That's why I'm always telling people in Parliament, let me not take up my Katatura manners.
Right.
Because I grew up in Katatura. And I will not hesitate to tell you off if it is needed to do.
Be part of the debate by setting the agenda.
My response in terms of Rwanda at 6% is that we had been there before. We've had 6% growth before. It's not something that Namibia has not achieved in the past, and it's not something that Namibia will not be able to achieve in the future.
Eagle FM, the eye.
lipuranenge no wapumbwa eva tere ulikoni maondo tutoingida ashike kapeno nweku dite opoye ekukulile oshafafana nongeshe faili meholamo iho etike kovano ile koshiwana onongeshe fa yapumbwa kukaraya kovano okupitiramo Eagle FM otuna ebitoda njuka okukwetera oipindi konu kondado inawa nuneudo otukwetera o special ngetashake ngeshefa omarudi dayo loka opone ushendi fenawa nokumona oijamoili nawa ningepata fanona monika ko Eagle FM onora etatu imwe mbali heali nola natu heali mbali no heali ile komberewa nora hetatu natu mbali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
Fraud.
Not fraud, it's a scandal. Why do you give a tender to somebody who does not have capacity to build? Why should you do that? You know a person that does not have a capacity to build.
Eagle FM lets you talk.
That's why I'm always telling people in Parliament, let me not take up my Katatura manners.
Right.
Because I grew up in Katatura. And I will not hesitate to tell you off if it is needed to do.
Be part of the debate by setting the agenda.
My response in terms of Rwanda at 6% is that we had been there before. We've had 6% growth before. It's not something that Namibia has not achieved in the past, and it's not something that Namibia will not be able to achieve in the future.
Eagle FM, the eye.
And welcome now to Home Run. 7 minutes into the hour of 5, Monday to Friday, joining you from 4 to 7 is Home Run. That's with Helmut and Dwight on Eagle FM. And, every Monday we have an hour. That's the first hour that is from 4 to 5. That is taken up by Oluwazi, giving us a wonderful education into what's happening in the. Okay, now I'm about to break something here. What's going on into the Namibia's property market. That's something that's some of those sources of information that are highly sought after, but it's not understood by a lot of people because they use a lot of, just like every discipline, it has its own language. The moment you start having conversation with them, they start throwing big words like mortgage bonds, Lisa and Lisi. At this point, now you're thinking about your sister Lisa. No. That's not that. They're talking about a different Lisa. So you start talking about what mortgages themselves. What's that word that always, that made my head spin? Was that 2020, 2022, 2023? Of course, it's still making my head spin. Welcome to the property market. Now, we put a pause on that, and today we're going to talk about the African Union's point of view, not point of view, but plans with regards to their plans on how to handle Ebola. And okay, first of all, I can't believe we're having these discussions today. So it turns out that the African Union had, that's the Africa CDC, which is a part of the African Union. And that's Africa CDC. Actually, it's think of it as an extension of the CDC. That's a Center for Disease Control. But the African version now, the CDC itself, is Center for Disease Control. That's that's a US thing. So the Africa CDC with the CDC had a discussion this year with regards to how to help Africa. That sigh is for I have been having that sigh pretty much the whole day because I looked at all the plans that the CDC, more like all the foreign institutions, foreign countries are sort of like coming to Africa's rescue with regards to handling some of the problems, whether it's energy related, industrial, overall industrial related, or health related, and all that, in terms of fighting certain diseases. Ebola right now in Central Africa is still causing chaos. Now, HIV and AIDS is now. Al Jazeera made an entire, I think, about 25 minutes. Call it an point of, pardon me, an expose, if I can call it that, of Gaza province. Not Gaza, this one in Namibia or the one in the Middle East. This is Gaza province, a province in Mozambique. It's one of those places that has been hit hard by the fallout of the pulling of financing by the U.S. when Trump came into office from organizations like PEPFAR, for example. All the UN and American-based organizations that were helping to finance health-related projects on the African continent, basically in developing countries, which obviously includes Africa in that developing countries category. Now, here's the thing. Because when Trump came into office, that in the beginning, he had, they were homies with Elon Musk, and they started to do a lot of budget cuts, and I can't blame them for that. It's their taxpayers' money, even though they are stealing it. That's for them and their taxpayers, to sort out. But the fact that we are still talking about coming up with plans on how to handle Ebola better in 2026, And now having that discussion is not much of a problem, but having that discussion while heavily relying on foreign funding is, I'm looking for a word that is less offensive here, is stupid planning, because the first case of Ebola was recorded in 1976 in DRC, and ever since there have been several Ebola outbreaks for all across the African continent. Especially, it haven't been that much, but some of the let me just say the major Ebola outbreak ever since 1976 to 2026, basically, that I was able to find when I was looking this whole thing up was much of the outbreaks have happened for the most part in Central Africa. I think DRC, Congo Brazzaville, Uganda, that part, and the parts of not equatorial, the parts of Guinea. Guinea. I'm not sure if this is Guinea Conakry or Guinea-Bissau. Yeah. Now that part of so the parts of Benin. So you have much of the outbreak that have much of the Ebola outbreak have been recorded ever since the first outbreak was recorded in DRC. Then Zaire, for those of you that are, I'm at 2K. Before it was DRC, it was Zaire. Long story. In the very same way that before it was Namibia, it was Southwest Africa. Before it was Tanzania, it was Tanganyika. Well, you get the picture. Now, the thing is, so what you're telling me is since 1976, we have been friends, at least that's what it's called, to use their own diplomatic language, with Western countries for a very long time. Since 1976, the first Ebola outbreak was recorded in 1976, and we are in 2026. We are still relying in terms of how to combat this problem. We are still relying on on external financing. 1976, right? Now, here's the reason why I'm sort of like just setting the whole thing on fire from the get-go, and that's because if you look at post World War II, to sort of out of fear for the most part of communist expansion. That's one of the fear that actually drove the Western countries, especially the Americans, to finance reconstruction of European countries. And now, if you look at how that reconstruction took place, and how Europe moved from Second World War, think 1946, all the way to 2026. With Germany, it took a little longer, considering Germany was the naughty child in this whole shenanigan. Now, Europe's reconstruction was not based on donor funding. And that's actually something that I find very fascinating. When it came to Europe's reconstruction after Second World War, the Americans knew what to do. Let me just say, it was mostly the Americans. The Americans, they knew what to do. To avoid, Soviet expansion or, to avoid Soviet expansion or communist expansion, they decided to pour in a lot of money into the reconstruction, aka creating industries. They funded a lot of, they helped finance a lot of industries that we have, that we see in Europe today. That, giving you all your fancy cars and all your fancy products that you get out of Europe. But, industries were built in Europe, and donations were piped straight to developing countries, of which think pretty much the entire Africa. Now, here's the thing that I find very fascinating. It's either Western leaders, especially Americans, intentionally just decided to finance TREP in terms of donor funding developing countries, including Africa, by not, engaging with them in terms of, a trade relationship, industry upskilling and industry building. Because they could have done that. They did the exact same thing for Europe. Now, in other words, they knew that if you want to develop a country, You don't give them donation after donation. You establish trade relationship with them and you build industry in those countries. How do I know that? Am I an expert? No, I'm not, because that's exactly what the Europeans and Americans are doing right now. This, if you ask me, is something that they should have done a long time ago. But, for some reason, they didn't do that. Now, I'm not going to point all the fingers to to Europeans and the Americans, because we have our own brains and we have a lot of people with advanced degrees on this continent. So since a lot of African countries, I think especially Nigeria, started having their got their independence, and also the Francophone countries got their independence in the 1960s all the way to the 1970s. So from the 60s onward, all the way to the 1990s, all the way to 2000, there's not a single one of us on this continent with our advanced degrees that stood up and said, "Hang on a second. This whole donor funding, this is not how Europe was financed or was helped to industrialize." We just thought that, you know what, Europe was financed into industrialization. And we thought that, donation was going to work for us. Just donation. No upskilling. No industry building. Just donation. That could work. Well, now what you see is we are scrambling to build trade relations with pretty much anyone that has a checkbook, and you have and we have we have the Europeans, because the EU has a lot of economic significance in terms of foreign direct investment on the African continent. And you see the Asian countries like South Korea, Japan, Singapore, China, establishing trade relations and building industries to help industrialize Africa. My question is, are we just figuring this out now? Because if anyone that has ever picked up a history book is that after Second World War, Europe was not donated into industrialization. They were upskilled and invested into industrialization. With our PhDs, we never thought to ask one question to the Americans or the Europeans. Think the 1970s and 80s, at least the 80s and 90s as a belief. Hey, my Africans came back. Anyway, there's not a single person that at least stood up and said, okay, hang on a second. We see a lot of industrial development in terms of manufacturing and value addition taking place taking place in Europe. Is it possible this whole donor funding is not going to work? Because from the look of things, we're just realizing that now. It wasn't until the second Trump administration that's when you saw the White House sort of like pivoting from a donor-based type of relationship, a donation-based type of relationship with the African countries towards a trade type of relationship with the African countries. Sort of like China beat them to that. And I feel like to a large degree, it's easy to assume that sort of like China, established that type of relationships, and now they had to play catch up. So here's the question: it's either Western countries just decided, you know what, we're going to develop Europe, but those ones just spoon feed them so that they don't develop. It's either that. Actually, I'm blaming both Western countries and Western leaders and African leaders. Western leaders for just sending money, billions and billions of dollars into of donor funding, and that has its own wide discussions as to who benefits from all this money, and it's a fascinating story. But that's not what we're here for. What I'm here to criticize is we're just figuring out now that investment works better than donation. Both the donors and the recipients, donors as aka Western countries and recipients aka African countries. Now, when you talk about donation, of course, this speaks to it speaks to all developing countries that have been recipients to decades of donor funding from, that has been recipients to decades of donor funding from Western countries. But we're in Africa, so I'm just going to focus in Africa here. The fact that there's not a single one of us that at least stood up and said, okay, you know what? Actually, there are a lot of people that did that. We just never listened because a lot of people were busy buying properties in Switzerland and France to care for, the busy getting their Camborotos and wives designer bags from the kickbacks out of the donor funding. Okay, guys, here's the thing. If you are new and you are waiting for an apology, it's not coming because, well, political correctness, not my thing. So now we are sitting here in 2026 talking about let's see how we can come up with plans of expanding a disease type of a threatening response, like especially Ebola. Right. Which brings up the question. So there were two models. Of relationship that were established. Two models of relationship that were established by Western countries, especially the US, post World War II. Model number one is one that was geared towards industrialization, and that's the model that was applied to Europe. Build industries, finance, I think value addition, local content policy type of thing. Now, when it comes to when you look at the countries like Germany, for example, their local content have been running for a very long time. They gave you education, remember? Back when they were Prussia. Interesting enough. I mean, when I first heard the word Prussia, I thought Russia. It turns out no. Well, interesting. Now, so let's now let me just pause my ranting so that we can just talk about what Africa has. We finally have a plan. Ever since we recorded the first outbreak in 1976, finally we have a plan on how to address Ebola. No biggie. It's not that it took about 40 years for us to realize. Really? You know what? I'm gonna go for a break.
lipuranengeno wapumbwa eva tere ulikoni maondo toingida ashike kapeno nweko dite opoye ekukulile oshafafana nongeshe faili meholamo ihoetike kovano ile koshiwana onongeshe fa yapumbwa kukaraya kovano okupitiramo Eagle FM otuna emitoda njuka okukwetera oipindi konu kondado inawa nuneudo otukwetera o special ngetashake ngeshefa omarudi dayo loka opone ushendi fenawa nokumona oijamo ili nawa ninge kwata fanona monika ko Eagle FM onora etatu imwe mbali heali nola natu heali mbali no heali ile komberewa nora hetatu natu mbali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
Fraud. So
Not fraud, it's a scandal. Why do you give a tender to somebody who does not have capacity to build? Why should you do that? You know a person that does not have a capacity to build.
Eagle FM lets you talk.
That's why I'm always telling people in Parliament, let me not take up my Katatura manners.
Right.
Because I grew up in Katatura. And I will not hesitate to tell you off if it is needed to do.
Be part of the debate by setting the agenda.
My response in terms of Rwanda at 6% is that we had been there before. We've had 6% growth before. It's not something that Namibia has not achieved in the past. And it's not something that Namibia will not be able to achieve in the future.
Eagle FM, the eye.
Welcome. So, yeah. my favorite part about my job is I just get to cook people for terrible decision making, especially after making fun of, after criticizing anyone else, especially the youth, for terrible decision making. So the 5th of June, this is not health, this is the World Health Organization. The 5th of June, 2026, Africa CDC and the World, it's Africa CDC and the World Health Organization, not the Africa CDC and American CDC, the World Health Organization. The Africa CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the World Health Organization launched in June a joint preparedness and response plan on the ongoing Ebola outbreak caused by the Ebola virus. I can't pronounce that other one. Now, the painful part is coming. We all know that when it comes to planning, Africa is very good. It's the financing that's a problem. So we are very good at writing a shopping list and then expecting someone to come and finance that shopping list. Think of it this way. Africa, think of Africa as yourself, assuming you were that dumb. And you now, you have, you are sitting at home and you compile a shopping list of what you need in your kitchen. And then you call someone to come and, pay for that stuff that's missing in your kitchen. And then you somehow find a very good Samaritan or someone with a lot of ulterior motives. So, and then they come in and finance what's in your kitchen. They put in the fridge and everything. And then when they start to come and start eating the stuff that they bought for you in your kitchen, hear me, bro. By a donkey. Yeah. Anyway, so and then when they start eating the stuff that they bought for you in your kitchen, you start complaining that it's your property, it's your house, therefore no one can touch your stuff. Well, they're allowed to tell you that I bought this stuff for you, Dwight.
The Helmut. And good afternoon to the listeners.
How's the event?
Well, there's so much things happening. I'm in the green hydrogen space that sometimes you can't even keep what you call it, keep track of everything.
Yeah.
But this is this was a discussion about, it has the opportunity to transform Namibia into another direction. But before that, ad break.
When it comes to managing your investments, should you rely on one expert or a team of specialists? With a multi-managed portfolio from Alex Forbes, your funds are guided by carefully selected investment experts, working together to pursue more consistent outcomes. We pair the right managers behind the scenes so you don't have to manage multiple relationships. Strengthen your investment destination. Visit alexforbes.com today. Alex Forbes Namibia is registered and regulated by NAMFISA.
lipuranengeno wapumbwa eva tere ulikoni maondo totoingida ashike kapeno nweku dite opoye ekukulile oshafafana nongeshe faili meholamo ihewetike kovano ile koshiwana onongeshe fa yapumbwa kukaraya kovano okupitiramo Eagle FM otuna emitoda njuka okukwetera oipindi konu kondadoi nawa nuneudo otukwetera o special ngetashake ngeshefa omarudi dayo loka opone ushendi fenawa nokumona oijamweli nawa ninge kwata fanona monika ko Eagle FM onora tatu imwe mbali heali nola natu heali mbali no heali ile ko mberewa nora hetatu natu mbali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
Fraud.
Not fraud, it's a scandal. Why do you give a tender to somebody who does not have capacity to build? Why should you do that? You know a person that does not have a capacity to build.
Eagle FM lets you talk.
That's why I'm always telling people in Parliament, let me not take up my Katatura manners.
Right.
Because I grew up in Katatura. And I will not hesitate to tell you off if it is needed to do.
Be part of the debate by setting the agenda.
My response in terms of Rwanda at 6% is that we had been there before. We've had 6% growth before. It's not something that Namibia has not achieved in the past, and it's not something that Namibia will not be able to achieve in the future.
Eagle FM, the eye.
Welcome back. So if you're just tuned in, this is Home Run with Helmut and Dwight on Eagle FM. So we continue with Dwight. So a lot of things going on in the green hydrogen industry.
Well, I won't say a lot, because the discussion that I just came now from specifically also probably fits into the scenario that you're basically also here giving a public consultation presentation.
Yeah.
In the sense that it starts a process, but a process based upon, you can look at anything across Namibia potentially that can fit into a green transformation, for one way or another. This can be rural development, this can be community. Well, community can be a rural community or can be an urban community. It can be, it's broad based primarily. And this is just to cite to us, the Namibians, that you can look at anything primarily that plays within this green industries realm and see how you can get money. Not that I'm Father Christmas for that particular last sentence, but that's the gist of the discussion. But we'll keep that for a future home run, and for David for tomorrow specifically, because he'll get first dibs at some of the particular content.
Yeah. So just a quick rush through of what I started with. So I just learned today that the first Ebola case was recorded in Zaire, Zaire today is DRC, in 1976, and we are talking about Africa's plans for not just overall. There are a lot of things that we respond to, but the plan that we're here to discuss today in relations to Africa's planning is specifically in response to Ebola outbreak, because ever since 1976 there have been multiple outbreaks in Central and West Africa of this virus, and from the look of things, from what I was able to gather, every time we need external assistance, which I'm saying now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying they have been, it's good to, it's one thing to, to require. It's one thing to ask for external assistance, but it's one thing to be dependent on that external assistance, especially in terms of financing and expertise.
Yeah.
So this is something that started showing up in 1976, and we are in 2026. We are still, we're still planning. Shouldn't we have figured out some kind of plan by now?
Okay. This is obviously primarily based upon our discussion of we're obviously taking a Pan-African look at things.
Yeah.
Helmut, when you and I, we always get into this particular conversation of the African continent's drive and the ambitions that, it's the two of us here on Eagle FM on the home run, seeing the ambitions and the potentials. But then,
and that word must
that word we need to throw that word far away. But but that word, every time I say that word stings even more than what Wamkele Mene technically meant it to sting like, but it just stings even more. When we continuously look at those things, you could immediately see, Helmut, it's the invisible fragmentation that is present on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the invisible fragmentation, to what I speak towards, is the individual state, individual state representation, and then you've got this other action of when we when the countries come together for various particular things. For example, like in last week with regards to the migration report, where I was so disappointed when I discovered this report technically, Helmut, was compiled at the end of 2022. It collected data between 2020 and 2021, and then they decided to jump back and collect data to correlate it with data from an earlier period, I think more like 10 years back.
Yeah.
But then this report gets printed for the first time in 2025. A report that's finished in written, Helmut.
Mm-hmm.
It's written, it's done, it's put together. Data has been analyzed, has been evaluated, has been interpreted. It's done. But it's first printed in 2025. And when I asked the lady who was walking around handing out, it was this nice little, it looks like a business card, but it's got like a QR code on it. And then you just need to scan it and then you can access the report. And I asked the lady, madam, this thing says the fourth report 2022. Where's the report that our minister is standing there on the stage for? This labor, and we'll get to talk about this labor, this migration report as well, dear listeners. Don't worry. But I'm citing something that I've been observing for a very long time. And then the lady says, no, it's the right report. The report that your minister and the other dignitaries just now unveiled. I said, look, I didn't want to show the disgust on my face to the lady who answered my query.
Yeah.
But then I sit there thinking to myself, so the report I downloaded on day one of this STC on labor, employment, and social development has been this report, which I thought probably is a little bit outdated because probably the AU is probably not that, they're not that. I almost used another ugly word, English word, a formal word, but I would have looked a little bit crude. That the AU is probably not so. Let me use it, man. It's not so dumb as to walk around with 2022 statistics in 2026.
But aren't we doing exactly that?
And then that's exactly what was launched. That's exactly what, unfortunately, our minister and the other representatives from the International Migration Organization, the International Labour Organization, and there was the AU guys from, and then Stats, and then the Swedish Statistics Agency. And we are launching a report with statistics or data that's 4 years old. In between, Helmut, this past weekend, Ceuta or what, Ceuta or whatever that thing's name is, that enclave that Spain has in Morocco, that situation happened. Did you see the surprising thing of that one migrant that was told by the people, that the Spanish authorities will send you just back, that? He was happy and jubilant.
Okay, but what did he expect though?
And for swimming, that triathlon distance that they swam, because they swam like in a right angle triangle. In a right angled scenario. They swam out in 90 degrees this way, and they swam back, and then they swam in. I don't know how they did that, but they did it very cleverly, the people, specifically. Just to be told, there's 60,000 of you, welcome, thank you, we will feed you, we will let you have a shower.
But after that,
we're loading you onto buses and sending you back.
Okay, but wasn't that after, didn't there were about 60,000 of them.
Yeah.
And 40 is at about 40.
It grew to like 89,000, I think, by yesterday.
Jeez. Now, isn't 40-something thousand of them voluntarily just decided, you know what, well, I'm going back.
But that's the thing. They were the voluntary guys because they probably realized that from Spain, because I have a sneaky suspicion it has something to do with Spain's announcement back in June, the month before, or end of May, where Spain said, contrary to the trend that is happening in Europe and the rest of the EU, of let's stop taking in migrant workers and migrants, specifically from North Africa and Africa, which speaks to some of the things that the Mate plan tries to achieve. Spain went and said, you know what, guys, we will try to still tap into migrant labor to help our economy still flourish and go forward. I have a sneaky suspicion it might be tied to that. But the distance between when that prime ministers of theirs, Sanchez, announced it in end of May or in the middle of June, and now at the end of July, it's a long distance. You cannot even try to tie the two. But as I said, I have a sneaky suspicion because what is the motivation? Who told these people to show up there at the enclave?
Oh, 60,000 of them.
No, 80,000.
80,000
Yeah,
of them.
89,000 of them that cross over.
But that's
Who
what
told them?
That's a very large number.
It's a specific number, and specifically to try and get into Spain. It's not even like trying to go into Libya and then pay a trafficker on a questionable flotation device to get you to France. No, these guys were told go and collect here.
Okay, the sheer volume on its own raises a lot of suspicions, which brings up all kinds of discussions. But anyway, that fragmentation you pointed out with regards to how Africa sort of like tries to address its problem. Political fragmentation.
Yeah,
that is not a problem. Our biggest problem is actually I don't hope for Africa to unite politically. That's a terrible idea. Because my question is
that is the one thing that I was trying to avoid.
No. Economically, yes. Politically, no. Because there will be a lot of political. Imagine the bureaucracy. We can barely make things, implement things on an individual state levels.
Yeah.
All 54 of us. Now, imagine, just making it. Imagine the bureaucracy. I can only imagine how ridiculously large it's gonna be. And you know how the ECOWAS guys, was that last week decided to announce that by 2027 we have a new currency.
I wonder on whose money.
Here's the thing. I'm just having I just woke up this morning. I decided to look up this whole Africa news, Al Jazeera and all those things, and then I come across one that has the headline of Guinea says it's opting out of ECOWAS single currency. I was like, okay, well, that didn't last then.
And mind you, Guinea is not one of the 3 misfit countries.
Nope.
Now, why would Guinea say no? Why would Guinea say no, Helmut? Because Guinea is still part of the French community. Yeah. Because Guinea's money still sits where?
Paris.
In Paris. So, the particular question that those 3 misfits... Can I know that idea probably came from the misfits?
Last month, 12 members... I'm assuming this is Guinea... Conakry because Guinea-Bissau is always indicated Guinea-Bissau.
Yeah.
But before we continue on the other side of the break.
Planning a trip from the coast to the north? Then travel with Intercape. Safe, dependable, and affordable with over 50 years of trusted service. From the 31st of July 2026, experience our new Valfors Bay to Otapi and Okahawo via Oshakati route with convenient stops in Swakopmund, Arandes, Usakos, Karibib, Omaruru, Kalkfeld, Ochivarongo, Otavi, Tsumeb, Oshivelo, Omuthia, Onyanya, Onankali, Ondangwa, Ongwadila, and Oshakati. Enjoy 50 kg of free luggage with your journey. Book your ticket at your nearest Intercape office on the Intercape app or call 081-950-2100. That's 081-950-2100. You can also visit our Intercape office at the June Mall Valfors Bay for bookings and inquiries. Intercape. Safe, dependable, and affordable.
lipura nengeno wapumbwa eva tere ulikoni maondo toingida ashike kapeno nweku dite opoye ekukulile oshafafana nongeshe faili meholamo ihoetike kovano ile koshiwana unongeshefa yapumbwa kukaraya kovano okupitiramo Eagle FM otuna evitoda njuka okukwetera oipindi kono kondado nawa noneudo otukwetera o special ngetashake ngeshefa omarudi dayoloka opone ushendife nawa nokumona oijamo ili nawa ningekwata fanona monika ko Eagle FM onora etatu imwe mbali heali nola natu heali mbali no heali ile komberewa nora hetatu natu mbali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
Welcome back. Let's continue. Let's look at Africa's plans to resolve Ebola now. Before I hand you, before I pass the ball to you, Mr. Links, I came across something that, even more plans, but this one is Ebola specific. Now,
you can't get any more plans.
Africa.
You and I, we've just been speaking about when it comes to the our segment on the AU on the home run.
We have
it's
a lot
just
of
plans.
We
are planning.
Plans.
We reaffirm
that the poor EU, especially GIZ, have to finance. And now. Not us. Look, we have we have to, we have to split the responsibility here. We plan, the EU finance,
and then and in between we get told, listen, this is a spelling mistake, that's a typo, and you can't actually do this. This is fairy tale land.
Yeah, and after they finance everything, we tell them to
pay reparations.
Yes.
Yes.
Like, what do we want, really?
What do we want?
Seriously?
Yeah. But yeah, you were still saying
anyway, so the Africa Center, now this is from June. This is from June of this year, the 5th of June, from World Health Organization. The Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa CDC, and the World Health Organization launched a joint continental preparedness and a response plan on the ongoing Ebola outbreak caused by Ebola virus. The plan aims to raise 518 million in US dollars. Yeah, to
not
support
not an Indrik boys.
No, in US dollars. To support African countries together with partners to prepare for a rapidly detected and respond to the outbreak. The 6 months plan covering June through to November brings together government partners and communities under a unified one response approach to strengthen outbreak response measures, including emergency coordination, disease surveillance, laboratory testing, infection prevention control, clinic care, and community engagement, research, logistics, and support for essential health services. The plan complements a national responses plan launched by governments of the Republic of Congo and Uganda. Now, my question here is: why are we planning now for something that we should have? And now, there's something that was pointed out by one lady. I believe she's West African on TikTok. That is it just me who is confused with regards to how how financing was done by especially the Americans post World War II? If you look at the type of financing that was done to help with Europe's reconstruction, it was more about industry building, building assembly plants, value addition, local content creation. That is the direction of financing that was done with regards to Europe. And then
no, it's actually rebuilding them.
Yeah,
remember they had them.
They had them, so they were rebuilding.
Rebuild, yeah.
So the rebuilding. So that was so everything was tailored towards more like
replacing what was damaged.
Yeah, bottom line, infrastructure development, which also created a lot of content, local content creation. Now, when it comes to, of course, to local content, they, they were not starting from scratch because they had a lot of that going on,
which is us.
Yeah. And Germany, had a lot of that going on even during Second World War. very questionable local content, but we are not going to dive into that. So
I mean, that local content for them worked, Helmut. I mean,
well, it works for the Japanese with Unit 731, but that's a whole different discussion.
No, when I say no, I'm not even there.
Yeah,
I'm on how that local content was supported. They placed it all on the gold standard. That was one of the reasons that the dubious gold that is still stuck there in Switzerland.
What gold?
That Switzerland even goes like, whose gold? Me? Never. You didn't see that train come across the border.
Me? What train?
Who sent gold here? Whose gold are you?
It's a train, man. You should have seen it. Now, but at the very same time that this type of financial relations or economic relations was going on with Europe and especially the Americans, this was around the same time that if from the 1960s you see a lot of African countries achieving their independence.
Yeah.
And one thing that you begin to see is that up until the early 2000s, when you saw a lot of conversation with regards to to trade relation based type of relationship instead of a donor funding based one, started happening.
Yeah.
But for a very long time, while a local content infrastructure development was taking place in Europe, a whole different type of relationship was being had by especially the US and later Europe with developing countries, which included Africa, and that relationship was mostly based on donations. And now, I feel like it was China that basically flipped that script with instead of coming in with a bunch of donor fundings, it came in with okay, how about we just trade, and that sort of like made the West, also change their script from, pardon me. From a donor funding type of relationship to a trade and diplomatic and mutual trade and diplomatic relations one, which is why I find the the national security strategy that was published last day by the Trump administration very fascinating, because even though Africa is way at the bottom there, something that I find fascinating about that document.
Helmut, we had half a page. We weren't way at the bottom. We had half a page. But we were way at the bottom.
So it's bad times two. So here's the here's the one thing that
we didn't even get a proper mention. They just skip through us.
Now you know why. Now you know why I really appreciate the Chinese for coming to flip the script, because I feel like they didn't want to create a trade type of relationship, because it was just much easier to give you this type of dependence in terms of donor funding, because but in the national security strategy, it's pointed out that it's time in was it 2025? In 2025, that's when the White House is figuring out that it's time we change Africa's relationship from a donor funding one to a trade one. Really? It's either both African leaders and American leaders are so dumb, or they were both just benefiting from the status quo of donor funding. They never actually bothered to build industries, because that's exactly what we are seeing right now. Foreign direct investment, mostly directed towards infrastructure development, and even then, that infrastructure for the most part is Lobito corridor.
Yeah, it's Lobito corridor type.
So it's still extractive oriented.
Yeah, which is probably even a thing that if you look at the Africa CDC discussion.
Yeah.
What was that one phrase? What was the minister? No, it's the current Minister of Health. Back in last year when I went to that report launched, the one about that the One Economy launched about gender-based violence, that we also looked at here on the show. Back in last year, it's not just Minister Luvindau that has mentioned this, but there's also someone else. Primarily, when you look at like African responses to health, and specifically outbreaks of infectious diseases or non-infectious diseases, it has been a scenario, Helmut, of okay. What's the standard? if you look at this from a developmental sense, you ask the question of, okay, why don't I hear the same thing in Europe? You can maybe hear the same thing about an infectious disease outbreak in the US, because in the US, an immunization, a vaccination shot
Yeah.
costs from $1,000 upwards.
You know,
for
I-
them,
I
that's them.
I never really got that part though.
It's primarily, Helmut, because there is no public health care for the Americans.
So the template being set is that's what
Purely
happens
private.
when you privatize things.
Yeah.
Everything becomes ridiculous.
Go in-
Basically, everything becomes for profit, irrespective of how many people are
Yeah.
suffering because of, as a result.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's
Um,
terrible.
There was a time that America did actually have society-driven initiatives. Like, for example, if you look at that, they had social housing. For example, like the Bronx, like the projects, those names that they've got for those things
Yeah.
in New York. Those were for the immigrants that came into the US. They had a social housing issue. Those local authorities responded by unlocking money, because if you sit with an influx of people into your country, they potentially could be bringing diseases to your country that your country does not know of.
Yeah.
So they built social housing, and that was those massive high-rise, those massive residential units with thousands of people living in it. But this happened in the 1920s, and happened before the First World War, and just after the First World War. So now you look at scenarios of like, okay, what does a disease have in common, or the outbreak of a disease in the US and, for example, in Africa? It's potentially, let's rather say, negligent communities. What's the negligence here? For example, when this strain, this variant of Ebola broke out, I watched a France 24 report, because obviously it was breaking out specifically in East DRC, there with a conflict where you and I spoke last year about the conflict scenario.
Yeah.
In East DRC, in the same two provinces, North and South Kivu. The Congolese medical response teams on the ground have to walk around with a hand sanitizer kit. Every person they see, they spray their hands. Now, the first thing that told me from human habit is, okay, so personal hygiene is an issue in some of these countries in Africa. Meaning, like you and I, we were taught from primary school, for example, not just the teachers, but also there would be nurses coming to the schools in Namibia's public sector from the public hospitals to come and share information about what to do, how to respond. Always wash your food. Always wash your hands after coming out of the toilet. Always wash your hands before you eat your food. Stuff like that. Making sure that your hands are always clean when in certain scenarios. Now, if your medical response teams on the ground have to walk around with a hand sanitizer kit, there's an issue already. There's an issue already.
That means charity is not beginning from home.
Yes, charity is not beginning from home. It's also a scenario in terms of, okay, but before we continue, we're quickly going to take a short break. But we're going to still come back in terms of like human behavior feeding these outbreaks specifically.
Yeah.
Did you know that road safety is a shared responsibility? Become a good fellow walker by staying alert, using designated crossings, and making sure you're visible when it is dark, at dusk, and dawn. Let us unite to reach 0 deaths and serious injuries, because together we can. This message was brought to you by the National Road Safety Council.
Good fellow driver, good fellow walker, good fellow driver, good fellow passenger.
Welcome back. We continue with Home Run. We still have an hour to go. If you just tuned in, you didn't miss it. So there's still a human health type of discussion that we still have to have.
Yes. So I showed you primarily, okay, in the US is an exception because any other country acknowledges public health is a must. for the public. Even South Africa acknowledges that, because South Africa and Namibia try to play the dual role of dual systems, but we don't know what we want to be, purely capitalist or purely socialist. I am starting to like the mixed picture, because you can have the best of both worlds. However, this is obviously also based upon a scenario of, earnings potential for people, but that's a completely different discussion, because that has to do with pricing measures, how a private medical facility views their inputs into the economy, and so on. That is a completely different discussion. When we come, for example, into the scenario of the Africa CDC's response, now, I don't know if the World Health Organization probably knows that we drag our feet as Africans. I'm not talking about Namibia. I'm talking about all of us as the rest of the continent.
Union level.
Yeah. I don't know if the World Health knows that we drag our feet when it comes to specifically ensuring decent public health and decent overall healthy living in a country.
Yeah.
But we have to be honest, Helmut, in identifying certain particular problematic areas. The problematic areas being, African countries have to realize that they've got to invest a lot more to improve people's lives, versus just grandstanding, political grandstanding, showmanship.
Showmanship is the right word to
What's the other word? Some sort of political bravado discussion. If we put the nonsense theatrics to the side, the nonsense theatrics, for example, like being some of the political parties really being, let's take a Cameroon, being serious with life, and then they start impeachment procedures against Paul Biya, for example, because Biya is 90% of the year not in his own country. He lives in Switzerland.
He just
he
recently went missing. And he came back again.
Yeah, but still, Helmut, is it healthy? Because the first thing that we've got to identify of such a particular scenario is, are things healthy, for example, in a country like Cameroon? Are they healthy? What would be their level of response, for example, to an outbreak? And Cameroon is not very far from the other Congo Brazzaville. I think it's like there's a country between that Congo and Cameroon, even
Congo Brazzaville and Congo Brazzaville and Cameroon.
Yeah, there's like a country between them, so that's not very far. And if we can clearly identify that primarily other immigration services on the continent are not Namibia, Botswana, Zambia, Angola, and South Africa even, where you actually have people patrolling the borders, and also other services, other entities working in that country, basically to monitor animal migration, because we've got animal migration across borders. Like elephants, you can put up a fence, elephant doesn't care. Homeboy just decides he will show you what Hulk does, and then he will Hulk smash your fence for you.
Yeah.
So situations like that, where you know that in Namibia we've got agencies, officers, and ministries actively working, doing their part. Now, let's ask the question, for example, of how does Ebola come about? And you don't need this is not rocket science, guys. There's a reason why the internet exists. It's a lovely resource. Ebola comes about when you eat meat not approved for human consumption. Look, there are certain wild meats, game meats that you can eat, and some that you don't. Now I will ask you, for those of you that have been to game farms, that buy game meat in your retail shops here in Windhoek or wherever in the urban centers across the country, ask yourself, how does that meat get approved to end up on your shelf? To end up in your food basket? To end up on your plate at home? Ask yourself, I myself, someone who's eaten game since I was like, how doesn't matter how young I was. The same for you, Helmut, because you know that there are certain kinds of games. You will even hear game meat connoisseurs tell you, don't eat zebra.
Yeah.
It's the worst meat. And then you'll have other connoisseurs above them that would say, never eat alligator or crocodile.
No.
It's rubbish. They will tell you it's rubbish. There's no taste to the thing. And then there are more above that that will tell you, don't eat certain kinds of antelope. But we know springbok, kudu, eland, even oryx, they're sort of like the if I can say, like the defaults that you can eat.
Yeah.
Now we got to ask a question. Now, COVID was just 5 years, 6 years that way. COVID's whole reason, yes, anyone can come and yes, you can come and throw your $5 in there and say, yeah, it came out of China. True. But what is COVID's actual name? It's a zoonotic illness. It's an illness that comes from an animal. So why are we dabbing, and specifically as African countries, why are we not solving the nutrition discussion? What is allowed, what is not allowed? Los die ander diere uit, stick to the defaults. Play by the default. Just stick to defaults. And stop with the wars, because wars technically take food and production away.
Creates desperation, so people are going to eat anything they can put their hands on.
Exactly. Because if you help with bringing security and stability to a country or to a community or a scene, people will be able to eat.
You know, when it comes to meat, one thing that I find interesting, and I'm not the only one. There's a whole community that have basically asked this question. That have you noticed that when it comes to meat in any cultures, 99 to 100% of the cultures that eat, the preferred meat in their different environment, in their different terrains, because the type of the type of wild animal you find in Africa are not the same type of wild animals you find, you find in Asia and you find in North and South America. But the point is, much of the meat that is eaten all across cultures is most likely going to be herbivores.
Yes.
Carnivores, not much.
Goat, cattle, mutton, which is sheep. There's an active debate that every time I bump into someone who says, hey, I'd like lamb, and I'm like, you know that's actually mutton. You know?
Just go with lamb chops, please.
We're no fan. But yeah.
Look, man, it's on the menu. I'm just ordering.
I know. But when we look at these particular approved meats, pork is there, fish is there. The question then also that starts from this discussion is accessibility to these basic animal proteins.
Yeah.
But cheese is also an animal protein.
Yeah.
Milk also has a protein in it, which is animal. So
cheese, milk, same as a group.
Yes, yogurt the same as well. It's slightly fermented or cultured, as the word would be with yogurt, but there's a protein in there, and all of these are animal products. But the broader discussion, Helmut, is that when you come to a place like Namibia, you see a thriving distribution network of where you can get the food. Then you also have a thriving I'll call it a subculture, because we now have a consumption culture, meaning you buy and you consume. But there's a sub or parallel culture of subsistence farming as well. And even there, Helmut, you don't see dodgy meat being on the menu. You will see a household, doesn't matter where you go in any communal land area or to any commercial farm area, you will see that there's a standard animal protein and then it's complemented with livestock. I almost said vegetable. What's the other one? With crop products, factoring into the diet of that person.
Yeah.
Yes, one of the problems could be that a household could end up with, because they are practicing monoculture, they might end up with a dietary deficiency. Yes, but they at least have a known food. I don't know what's going on. That every year Ebola comes and goes in DRC. I don't know.
I mean, that's taking to you are what you eat to, taking the statement, you are what you eat to a whole another level. But,
True.
Okay, the thing is that, okay, is this in February? Let me just make sure. Not February, that's a whole different document. So that's July 15th. This is the African Medicine Agency now, signing a memorandum of understanding with the, with the MFA, that is the, that's the Medicines for Africa.
Yeah.
That's now Medicines for Africa is it's a South Africa it's a South African organization that's advocates for for the safety and the regulations around prescription medicine, because that whole that whole document, that whole memorandum of understanding is centered around how to combat illicit drug movement, and this is drug in relations to mostly synthetic drugs coming out of the pharmaceutical industry. Now, when you and I talked about when we had the drug discussion, the illegal drug use and the transport, or basically logistics on the African continent, one thing that that report pointed out was that much of the illegal drugs that's consumed in the illegal drug world market is coming out of the pharmaceutical industry. So now you have a very, you have basically an entire supply chain going on here.
Yeah.
You have the pharmaceutical industry that's producing some of these drugs to, to genuinely try to combat certain diseases and medical conditions. But some of them finds itself, on the black market, where it feeds the illegal drug industry. So now, if you have now the illicit drug movement on the African continent, so that means you are that's where the ingredients of the illegal drugs that's causing all kinds of addictions on the African continent, that's where they're coming from. So the African Medicine Agency and the Medicines for Africa, Medicines for Africa signed an agreement, in July, signed basically a memorandum of understanding. That's it's an agreement, but it's not one that is binding. It's more like, we're on the same page, we totally agree, but we don't have, the type of, a contract that basically has the legislative, backing behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so so the AMA and the MFA signed a memorandum of understanding to strengthen advocacy and communication on the continent's collective response to substandard and falsified medicine products. Now, this one is actually a very bleak one, because there are type of meds that has all kinds of questionable side effects that they are banned from the regular pharmaceutical industry in terms of trade. But because of unregulated boundaries in terms of how this medicine is moved, a lot of it finds itself, especially over the counter, and in places like DRC. Again, DRC came up there. And then, well, a lot of people have been given medicine that have been given all kinds of diseases.
USave's customers love combos, right? Well, for just 589 Namibian dollars, you can get 10 kilogram Champion Super Maize Meal, 10 kilograms of Bokomu Fed Cooked Flour, 10 kilograms of Marathon of brown or white sugar, 5 kilos of nice rice, plus 1 kilo of Grande pasta. That's just 589 Namibian dollars for 5 essential products. The ShopRite Group buys bulk, so you can save. Yes, we all save at USave.
So, one thing that was pointed out now here by the African Medicines Agency and was that under the Memorandum of Understanding, the AMA will leverage the expertise of the MFA in advocacy in communication to support national regulatory authorities. That is why I keep focusing on the regulation, because it all keeps boiling down to regulations. National regulatory authorities in Africa, in their initiatives to combat substandard and falsified medical products. And look, people just want to make money from the look of things. Now, if you have people that are selling illegal drugs like cocaine, of course there are people that will sell, pharmaceutical products that did not pass all the proper checkings for them to be rolled out for mass consumption or mass distribution.
Yeah.
But so now, to make sure that the only medicine that is in your pharmacy or that's in your health sector is one that has been vetted in terms of of safety for prescription, and who has the authority to prescribe, because there are different types of medicine. The two main categories in terms of distributions is you have the over the counter one. You can just go to any pharmacy and over the counter you can get yourself paracetamol. But I, for example, cannot just walk in a pharmacy without a prescription and get me propranolol for my essential tremors. The pharmacist will ask, where's your prescription? So, and this like the two main divisions. Now, what that means is the regulatory reference here is that the AMA and MFA both realized that if you want to solve problems of, falsely labeled meds, and that's one thing that they also realized. And, I don't want to say Madagascar COVID-19 type of meds, but the point is, what you have here is a regulation.
That was a novel idea.
It was a novel idea.
It even speaks into into Ali Yusuf's part of his speech here in this foreword of this strategy document, this plan, this preparedness plan. Should I help you with that explanation? I'm just listening.
Please go.
This reality must challenge us collectively. Our populations must no longer depend exclusively on the priorities, funding, supply chains, and production capacities of other regions of the world to protect their health and lives. This is why this crisis must accelerate our agenda for health sovereignty. I'll stop there. Hamud?
Our health sovereignty, huh?
I'll stop there.
Okay, how does health sovereignty works? We have a bunch of PhD or advanced degree holders on this continent. We know that it starts with either you spending a whole lot of money on intellectual property, information on research that have already been done for you to mass produce, think franchise type of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm now combining mass produce and franchise, hence the mass produce. Now.
You came up with a new word on English.
Yeah, glued them together. But now that's the option. It's either we go with that direction, which we all know we can't afford that direction because we don't have the money. Otherwise, we would be asking the people that have the intellectual property to borrow us the money so we can buy the intellectual property, which would be stupid. Not that we haven't done it. We do it all the time. Borrow money for infrastructure development, steal the money, and then go and borrow it back again. I mean,
do you know what's one of the funny things, and then we there where the infrastructure is being installed there in your country, you tell one of the local school kids to come and sing and dance there when the project is being unveiled. Now every time, how boring does this picture get? Every time when a new piece of infrastructure gets installed, now you have to bring a local school's dance troupe or cultural group out, let them sing and dance there because this infrastructure is being unveiled. Why? It's a bridge. It's supposed to do its job. Now we're here to sing and dance and make a whole...
No. Well, what are you doing? It's employment creation. The speech
no,
writer...
it's not.
The speech writer wrote a speech, so he got paid. And
the speech writer already has a job. It's the PA of somebody.
Well, okay, how about SNT of the honorable guy who is going to give a speech and show up with a giant scissor to cut a ribbon? And look, the things that we do.
No, if we change our mindset as Africans, for example, what is good to see. Like, for example, President Nandi Ndaitwah last year, pressing the button to switch on that machine that switched that, I think it's a furnace or something, at the Oshawela high iron complex there in Irongo region. Something like that. Then this is a technology not in Namibia. This is a process that will enhance Namibia's potential to participate in the green industries. Not for a bridge, not for a new piece of road, or for speed humps that are being installed now between Rebos and Windhoek. To my disastrous surprise, when I drove past it earlier today, I was like, you're really you're really installing speed humps between Windhoek and Rebos.
Yeah.
But yeah, at first I thought it was the police. But it wasn't. It's just a bunch of, bakkies sitting there, and the guys are just, you drill there, you drill there, you do this.
Yeah.
That's it. So, when we look at
Next thing you know, you have a bunch of speed humps between Shivarongo and Mukanja.
It seems like this is just within the Commerce region. This is so far just in the Commerce region.
Okay, but it's the Ministry of Works.
Yeah. So what I think is it works probably through the regional council onto the ground.
Well, okay, here's the thing. I'm thinking, as in everything else, this is a trial run. So if it works...
It's a dumb trial run, Helmut, because you are negating the word bypass, freeway, highway.
We can come up with our own things like speed hump way. And
that is what would be, or bump way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bumps on that
actually,
road.
I think it must be hump way. No, that's not gonna come.
No, Helmut, that would
no.
just be.
It's a little too X-rated.
That'll just be crude.
Boy, that's cruel.
So, yeah. So when we look at the dimension of what this particular development translates to, Ali Yusuf is speaking as a continent together. But we are focusing in completely different direction, Helmut, on what we should look at in our societies. For example, Namibia, if you look at each one of Namibia's ministries, each of the ministries will have a lovely policy document. Okay, let me check out the word lovely. But they will have a policy document at least present. It might be outdated. It might no longer be applicable to the current situation as we sit here.
Yeah.
But at least you will find at least one historic document that speaks towards what this ministry has to do. Or you'll have the overarching document like a National Development Plan or like the Harambee Prosperity Plan. Now, when we back on Friday, remember the question I asked Ivar Ishikovitz about when they spoke to the other Africans across the continent, did they ask them whether or not these youths from the other parts of the continent are aware of any national development frameworks that their governments brought out? Obviously, Ivar said they didn't really ask that question because that they developed their own particular survey direction and survey questions and aims and motivations. So, okay, yes, you can forgive that particular part. However, in the rest of the continent, Helmut, to be honest with you, it'll probably take a little bit of a lengthy exercise, but it'll be an exercise nonetheless for me probably to engage in, just to try and understand, does anybody else have a national development framework like Namibia? I know South Africa has one, and South Africa's one probably has longer time frames,
Yeah.
But when we look at this particular discussion, a national development plan helps to set where you want to take your country. And then your donor partners show up because then they go like, yeah, you know what, Dwight, Namibia, you guys are just awesome, you've got lovely planning. Helmut's favorite phrase. You've got lovely planning, a lovely document. We can help you achieve those goals as long as you pay interest. And then Namibia goes and says, you know what, we'll have a listen. Let's have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee.
Please
have a seat. We'll even offer you South African imported biscuits.
Yeah.
And let's see where these proposals could go in terms of the donor funding available. Now, currently, Namibia is hot property. But Helmut, we have to ask the question also, being hot property, does it translate into anything for us on the ground? There, I will tell you, be cautious. Let's first wait and see. Because currently, right now, to be honest, I don't know where to follow the US, Israel, Iran conflict, because they are shooting at each other, then they stop. Then they say, no, things are positive, we might be somewhere. Then they start shooting at each other. Then someone else joins the shooting, and then it becomes a whole mass shooting situation, and then they stop. And then they say, no, we hate each other, we don't want to talk to each other, but we're not shooting for now. And then the one starts shooting, and then they start shooting again. I mean, what kind of childishness is this in 2026 to look at?
That is the right word, childish.
What kind of international childishness is this for grown men?
Yeah.
That's why I said international childishness. Grown men.
Yep.
Now, here's the worst part now. When you think about military strategies, Nahmud, for you to shoot a rocket from your country into my country, I now have to sit here thinking, okay, must I now go and invade him for shooting that rocket? If I invade him, that now becomes a full-on war. What happens? What are my actions from here? What are my responses from here? Now, sitting in 2026, realizing that someone can press a button that can change your life, probably forever,
yeah,
or never, because, if you're dead, mate, your life, stopped right there, it's klaar. It's om en voorbij, it's finito. But if you get injured, then your life is changed, forever from there. I mean, we can work around aviation. How flight paths and planes can be deviated. We can work around that. It's easy peasy lemon squeezy. What we can't work around specifically is loss of life. Now, loss of life, coming now into an African context, looks in the format of fragile health systems. Because, for example, Helmut, why should the whole of the AU respond for what started in DRC? And then you realize, it's because the guy that's infected with this Ebola is walking across the border into Uganda. Because the two epicenters was DRC and Uganda. Yeah. And then there's like 4 or 5 countries around them. Thank God it's not Zambia. But 4 or 5 countries around those two countries that are also factored into the potential gallivanting of patient zeros. And when I say patient zeros, guys, you guys should always watch sci-fi movies specifically about zombie outbreaks and stuff like that. Because those movie directors, they research actual health response measures. So that, the dialogue and the knowledge and the discussions, can actually move from somewhere in a storytelling sequence.
Yeah, make it as as realistic as possible.
Definitely. So when you go and watch, for those of you guys that love watching The Walking Dead or any other related zombie apocalypse movies, which I technically hate because it's a dumb plot, because it's a truly dumb, it's a lazy plot above anything else.
Zombie.
Yeah, the zombie apocalypse, because it's like the jail movies, the prison movies.
Yeah.
That a lot of guys, I don't know why men love prison movies. Have you realized that?
Yeah,
it's a funny fascination by men to love a prison system, a prison movie, with all the violence. I mean, who would like their freedoms to be boxed off? And this is now Hunger Games times 1 million.
I think the last prison movie I've seen, I watched this was not a movie actually. It was a series, Prison Break, when it came out. I was glued to that thing, and now and then I just took a whole different direction into anything with humor and sci-fi.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's also
Okay, but Prison Break was interesting because the main character was an engineer. And his selling point was, I can break you out.
Your favorite character was the engineer?
Yeah, the main guy was. What's his name? Wentworth Miller's character.
Yeah, what's this? Michael Scofield.
Yeah.
No, mine was T-Bag Pego.
You even picked the guy with the weirdest nickname.
Yeah.
Is T-Bag the guy that is the Mexican in the piece? Or is it the other guy?
No, that's Sucre.
And Sucre is technically not even Mexican because he's actually an American.
Look,
Americans love the stereotypes.
T-Bag in Prison Break is one character that a lot of people find the most annoying person. And the thing is, it's what he does, what he says, and the seriousness with which he says all kinds of ridiculous things.
Yeah.
There was a time when they had something happened to the air conditioner in the prison. And it was getting hot as hell.
T-Bag, the crazy guy.
The crazy guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the thing is, I actually, I started following the T-Bag character like crazy when the air conditioner, stopped working in the, in the prison, and it was getting very hot. And he rallied, he brought together a bunch of guys to sort of like, basically do the T-Bag thing of intimidating the guards.
Yeah.
And his exact words were like, "It's getting hot in here. Why can't we just move us to someplace cool, like like Africa?"
Someplace cool, huh?
Yeah, why don't you just move us all to some place called like Africa? Now, look, the T-Bag character, whoever wrote that thing, made it to sound like, he's the most, anti-women and anti-African or anti-anything that's white. Only when he's in trouble, that's when he start quoting scripture word for word.
Yeah.
But, that's T-Bag. So, prison movies. One thing I find fascinating about zombie movies is maybe I think of it more in sort of like what would happen if it was real.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be fun if there was a zombie apocalypse, because in case if you have seen all the zombie movies, most of them just feature, all the zombies that you see, most if not all of them are adults. That would not be the case in real life.
Yeah, until people go and play Dead Space and Resident Evil.
Yeah.
And there's a Resident Evil TV show coming, so definitely you will have a whole bunch of people watching that TV show. But yeah, you were still saying, Ahmed.
So just putting a pause on the whole TV show things and coming back to the CDC discussion. Is it Bandi? I can't read that word. I swear. That's why I'm just calling it the Ebola virus. The Ebola virus.
Bundi
Bugyo.
Bugyo, yeah. Bundi Bugyo.
Assuming that's not an insult, that now.
Okay, you were still saying serious faces.
Yeah. So the Ebola Continental Preparedness Plan. There are a lot of people that basically gave a bunch of speeches there because you have, Ndayishimiye, the President of Republic of Burundi, chairperson of the President of the Republic of Burundi, and the chairperson of the African Union. Chairperson of the African Union. I found that a little, confusing. And you have the, cupcakes here with like a Jet Magazine type smile. He also sort of like gave his own forwards type.
Why are you calling him cupcakes?
Well, there was this kid that went viral because he called him that to his face.
Really?
Yeah.
The kid called him cupcakes?
Yeah.
We won't say here live on air, guys, because the South Africans might be listening.
Look, he just laughed it off. I mean, he's a very cool guy when he's not hiding money in the sofas. Sort of like gave it away. Anyway.
When he's not motivating Namibian entrepreneurial endeavors.
When he's...
I think Ramaphosa is no longer he's not gonna hire any Namibians.
Nah.
Never again.
The first question in the interview, if you're going to work for a Pala farm, is, are you by any chance Namibian?
Do you have any Namibian connection?
If the answer is yes, I'm afraid
you are rejected. Just go.
Yeah. So the finance that this project is going to need, it's running until November. But according to resources now on resource mobilization, this is what this is what it's saying, and that's on page 43. The ongoing Ebola outbreak presents a critical public health challenge requiring an urgent, coordinated, and well-resourced response all across, across affected and at-risk countries, especially the neighboring countries. Now, in response to the evolving epidemiological situation, World Health Organization, Afro and Afro CDC have jointly developed a continental preparedness and response plan with an estimated budget requirement of 413 million. Just make it 414 million to support preparedness, preparedness, response operation, cross-border coordination. Now, here's the thing. The reason why I kept singing the song of why are we talking about planning now when we have had literal decades to come up with ideas like this is how did we get to the point of talking about Africa Continental Free Trade Area? Let's use IDs to cross and move into different countries. Let's remove all the visas because it's expensive and difficult to travel to outside Africa than intra-Africa trade and intra-Africa travel.
Yeah, but my roads are rubbish, and your roads are nice and flat and soft. And let's say David's roads are probably washed away every year.
And you know what's worse when it comes to the health discussion?
Yeah.
Do you remember the Anthony Joshua car accident incident in Nigeria?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was 2 years ago, ne? 2024.
Now, ask yourself one question.
Or was it 2023?
Now, this is a global high-profile figure.
No, that was 2024.
Who had an accident in a country that brought, the health emergency response of the entire country under spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if this happened to Anthony Joshua, what is happening to an ordinary Nigerian?
Because in Anthony Joshua's accident, it was lack of response, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lack of response, but let's even come closer to Namibia.
Yeah.
For example, Namibia is trying to curb with reckless driving on its national road networks, on its national highways, because we've got.
You're not helping the speed humps, buddy.
No, I'm really not helping with the speed humps discussion. Reason being is because the speed humps are not the solution. And the reason why I say the speed humps are not the solution is primarily which factors into your question of what have we been doing?
Yeah.
If Namibia had reliable commuter infrastructure, like a railway line and stuff, between major urban settlements of Namibia, Helmut, I would not need. I would probably say, okay, wake up early at 5 a.m. to catch a 6 a.m. train that takes 3 hours to get from Windhoek to Rebos. No problem. But you know what? I would not have to pay attention in driving. Mm-hmm. I would not have to pay $400 to put in diesel or petrol or whatever. Mm-hmm. I would not have to drive the car. Someone else takes the burden of transporting me. But we didn't look that far. When we've got to look at the discussions of how to bring services to ourselves, African countries are failing deeply. And I'm saying on an ugly scale. So you cited Anthony Joshua, which was a good point, Helmut, because it also brought up the scenarios of what the ordinary Nigerian is facing. Mm-hmm. But let's also factor this in. Primarily, we know that we go to elections every year. I say every year, as if it's literally happening every year in Namibia. But yeah, let's just play with that idea. We go to elections every year on this continent. Ne? Zambia is apparently having an election later this year.
Ethiopia recently had theirs.
Yeah. Ethiopia's won. I wonder how do you still vote for Abiy Ahmed after he was responsible for technically killing fellow Ethiopians in the civil war of 2020 to 2021. I would not vote for such a guy. Even though the Tigrayan political party from the province of Tigray, even though those guys were partially responsible as well, I would still not be.
So he's
as a voter, I would still not support. I would not even show up to an election for a guy who decided to send the army.
So he's so he was supposed to be the adult.
Why not, Helmut? Why can't he not be the adult? For example, also like the discussion. If we look at the discussion on let's say the CDC discussion, why can't DRC in Uganda? They've got most enough money. Why can't they respond themselves, technically, in trying to curb, contain, and thus also trying to beat the spread of Ebola? Why does it now have to become an AU thing, an Africa thing? But every year, the same disease breaks out in the same provinces, in the same countries, and you want to respond with the same measures. Then we have to start asking questions of, okay, so what are you not doing right, DRC? Where are you spending your budgets on, DRC? Or is this also a misplacement of budgetary allocations in some African countries? There's a good thing that you pointed. Okay, actually, I also contributed about the roads, the disconnection of the roads. Ali Yusuf's words of vaccine sovereignty or health sovereignty, I don't know whose medical system is captured. But I don't know what he's talking about, in all honesty. I'm literally confused with just that sentence in his forward in this plan about sovereignty. Well, you could have done Madagascar. Yeah. What was the guy that bought the Malagasy COVID response? That president from Tanzania, the one that passed away?
Did Tanzania buy the?
They bought a batch before their president passed away.
Oh, John Magufuli.
Is it Magufuli?
Yeah.
Magufuli believed in the Madagascar COVID response. I don't know how effective the thing was, but you know what I felt?
You see, I think that is exactly why research and development is done.
Exactly, but you know why?
We want to just skip all the procedures in the middle and go straight to trust me, bro.
I cooked something up in my kitchen, but do you know what I felt, Hamud, during that response? I was hoping, okay, I want to see which continents are going to come up with, during that year of 2020, which continents are going to come up with possible, their tailored solutions in terms of how they're going to manage and deal with the COVID responses in their countries. Remember, Madagascar and Tanzania are major tourism hubs on this continent. And these countries were hard hit because a lot of those tourists decided to fly, not back home, to their countries. Because a lot of the tourists thought, okay, if I can't fly in Europe or in China, let me fly to an African country. Let me go hide there. But before that, ad break, guys.
Do you need toiletries and household cleaners? You won't get it cheaper than a U-Save up to the 7th of June. Get 250mm jars of Vaseline for only 25 Namibian dollars. Smell fresh with Playboy Roll-On Deodorant for just 18.99 Namibian dollars. Get 2 kilograms of Surf hand washing powder for just 49.99 Namibian dollars. Get 750ml Sunlight dishwashing liquid for 28.99 Namibian dollars. And get 2 boxes of Cares Maxi sanitary pads for only 12.99 Namibian dollars. U-Save. Where else?
Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
Fraud.
Not fraud, it's a scandal.
Scandal.
Why do you give a tender to somebody who does not have capacity to build? Why should you do that? You know a person that does not have the capacity to build.
Eagle FM lets you talk.
That's why I'm always telling people in Parliament, let me not take up my Katatura manners.
Right.
Because I grew up in Katatura. And I will not hesitate to tell you off if it is needed to do.
Be part of the debate by setting the agenda.
My response in terms of Rwanda at 6% is that we had been there before. We've had 6% growth before. It's not something that Namibia has not achieved in the past. And it's not something that Namibia will not be able to achieve in the future.
Eagle FM, the eye. Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
Fraud.
Not fraud, it's a scandal.
Scandal.
Why do you give a tender to somebody who does not have capacity to build? Why should you do that? You know a person that does not have the capacity to build.
Eagle FM lets you talk.
That's why I'm always telling people in Parliament, let me not take up my Katatura manners.
Right.
Because I grew up in Katatura. And I will not hesitate to tell you off if it is needed to do.
Be part of the debate by setting the agenda.
My response in terms of Rwanda at 6% is that we had been there before. We've had 6% growth before. It's not something that Namibia has not achieved in the past. And it's not something that Namibia will not be able to achieve in the future.
Eagle FM, the eye.
"13 minutes left to the hour of 7. That means we're about to come to the end of our show for today. So you are on the how do I say, not just the planning, but the resource mobilization.
Yeah.
Like you can even look at this from a regional resource mobilization.
Or not even regional. I mean, it's embarrassing every time to know that you're on a continent now where we have to stand with
you
a
constantly have to be bailed out.
To be bailed out, have to stand with a begging. I mean, it's just for us that the World Health Organization comes up with a preparedness plan. And then you go see in reports on the ground, specifically from other news agencies on the continent, what's actually happening in that country. I look at a few things. For example, when these other reporters go into communities, I look at the road services, meaning infrastructure. I look at standard of living, or what is the kind of living, everyday living, that people in these other African countries have, and then I look at the person, how things are prepared. Helmut, if you go to Asia, or if you go to even Europe, and you find an informal market, you would not believe me if I told you, but the thing is actually formalized. But it's an informal market. When you come to Africa, the first thing you have to fear for your life, the first thing you have to fear for in an informal market is for your life. Because first and foremost, you don't know, is the facility clean? Is the presentation of the food, if it's food, clean? Is it healthy enough? You have to ask all these questions. Now, you could potentially also argue this of many street vendors. Look, I also buy from street vendors, guys.
Yeah.
But street vendors approved by Helmut. That's how I know. But I
just
also
peanuts, dude. But yeah, highly approved.
Yeah. So, but even when you look at, for example, Helmut, like that vicinity around those street vendors, these ladies here, where you and I, we buy the peanuts sometimes from.
Yeah.
Did you see the unhygienic circumstances around them?
Yeah, I mean, that whole fence have been turned into
a partial public toilet. Yes. I know. Yeah. And not just that, where they sit on that part of the sidewalk, where they sit, also looks dirty, unkept, as well as also, it really doesn't give value to what they're trying to do, which is basically fend for themselves every day. But discussions like this, if you go even to Asia, they've got it's a market. It's markets, and it's just all kinds of food you will find there, from fish to vegetables to what, you know it, you want it, you get it. When it comes into Africa, when you come to Africa, you first have to fend for your life, because you now have to wonder, oh my goodness, is there going to be Ebola here or not?
Now, did you see this map?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very nice map.
Yeah. You're showing me the map because that's how I see it, Howard. Okay.
You're only seeing it now.
Yeah.
Now, this map.
Oh no, I saw it.
Thank you.
I saw it. I looked at it on Saturday. I was like, after waking up from my headache, I was like, are these people serious? And this was at a health convention, eh?
Now, see, this flawed map, don't worry, I will fill you into as to what map we're talking about. This flawed map opened during a State Department slide presentation at an
U.S. State Department.
U.S. State Department. A presentation at an AIDS conference in Brazil on Sunday about Washington's funding for programs tackling HIV. The State Department has described it as an unfortunate error caused when a team member hurriedly altered the slide deck before the event. Okay, now my question is, did they use Microsoft to glue these countries together? Because we know Microsoft, if you just move one picture, everything goes haywire. Unless you use, I use TextRep for the most part, and your pictures doesn't screw up your entire document. And because what I don't understand is how, because this for just for an existing map, that's impossible.
Yes. And if you knew your geography for that person, it would still be impossible, level 2. If they had consulted any other map before their own map, it would have been impossible, level 3. But the reason was, one of the reasons, and I don't know if that article shows it there.
First of all,
is they threw it into an AI prompter.
Oh, yeah. No, just forget AI.
Yeah, it was an AI prompt.
That is AI.
And it was a open AI mechanism.
Definitely AI.
It was an open AI mechanism that was used by the US government representatives there. So the person decided to quickly throw it in and then identify these African countries, which probably were in the presentation. That's why the borders look so weird when you saw the borders.
Yeah, because there's no Mozambique doesn't look like that.
And Mozambique doesn't sit that high either on the continent. And there's another country that was also weird. Malawi is very weird.
Yeah, you have Nigeria, who is now in the Sahel region.
Yeah.
And you have Mozambique, who is the side of Djibouti.
Yeah.
And you have Uganda, who is in parts of Kenya and Ethiopia, just
somewhere there.
Yeah, intruding. And you have Ivory Coast is now occupying where basically you would find Mozambique.
Yeah.
And you have Malawi is now about to go to war with Botswana and Zambia and Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And you have what's this one here? That's that one at the bottom there. They didn't even label that one. I'm assuming that's you know what? This is either just this on purpose or this is AI. One of these two. And I'm going with AI.
No, the explanation I was given apparently is AI.
Look, South Africa went through this earlier this year when they were told to draft an AI regulation. Then they asked AI to draft an AI regulation. It's about telling your babysitter to babysit your kids, and then they sit around asking the kids what is the best way to babysit them. You think there's a single kid on this planet that will give you the best ways to babysit them?
They'll probably say, you not being here?
They will tell, for one, you not being here would be a good start.
Yeah. Let's try that part.
Yeah.
And an unlimited supply of
anything with sugar.
Yes.
Hand it over.
Yes. No funny foods, no vegetables.
Yep.
No funny fruits.
Gory games and movies. Let's have those two.
That's it. And unlimited time to do whatever I want.
Yeah.
That's that's what a kid will tell you.
Then they, probably, setting the house on fire.
In between years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was just, hilarious. Turns out, 200 million to Nigeria, 180 million to Mozambique, 60 million to Uganda at least, and you have 50 million to Ivory Coast, 35 million, and this is and you have up to for all the all the figures basically, up to 35 million annually. That's for Malawi, and up to 5.4 million for Cameroon. It doesn't one of the hardest hit in terms of HIV. I think the lack of HIV meds.
Yeah.
Because of the Dodge programs of cutting funding to all the international programs, including PEPFAR, that has helped with the HIV meds for for victims or sufferers of that disease, was a place called Gaza province in Mozambique. And it's one of those places where the knock-on effect of more like the domino effect that is emanating from the Dodge programs are now being felt severely. Again, so you have Mozambique that is now having that type of trouble in terms of what's the best way to take care of their people in terms of HIV, after the Dodge programs. And you have DRC and Uganda, that and basically that part of Central Africa that have been battling with Ebola, and you have Zambia, Zimbabwe, Ghana, that throw in Kenya in that bucket, that have for a better part of last year into this year have walked into actions with regards to how to better how to whether or not to accept the America First Global Health Strategy initiatives being proposed to them by the Americans. All these things, all it required was planning, because you can't tell me we're in 2026. We're in 2026, man.
Yeah.
And we're still saying, Kime Tiger.
Yes. We're in 2026, we're still doing this.
Yeah.
It's not gonna end anytime soon, Helmut, because I mean, I know that in South Africa, what did you call him, Helmut? Chocolates. Or what? Cupcakes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know that in that scenario of South Africa back during COVID, South Africa's biggest headache was they have the labs, the pharmaceutical labs, they just couldn't get approval to manufacture a vaccine. That was a COVID scenario.
Intellectual property.
Yeah, because it was intellectual property, and and at that stage the dispute arose from one of those American pharmaceuticals who said yes, Africa CDC can get
they can manufacture
the recipe.
Yeah.
And when Africa CDC got the recipe, and the Africa CDC went like, okay, we'll give it to the South African laboratory. Mm-hmm. Then suddenly it was no,
change of plans.
No, you don't do that. And then that's where this vaccine sovereignty and vaccine, what was the other label, apartheid or colonization situation came from.
Just fund yourself. Fund your own programs. What colonization?
Stash your cash. Don't break the bank. Stash your cash with WB. Buy 2 kg packs of Tastic rice for $69.99. A 1 kg box of Jungle Oats for $37.99. A 2-liter Oros for only $36.99 with Smart Buy. And 2 2-liter bottles of Stay Soft for just $89.99. See more month-end deals at vurmanbrock.com. We care. Stash your cash.
Welcome back. It's 7 o'clock on the dot. That brings us to the end of today's home run. Until tomorrow, same time, same place on your favorite radio station. From me, you all have a blessed evening.
And on that note, dear listeners, stay tuned for the rest of the programming after the break, and we'll see each other again, same time, same place tomorrow.
lipuranengeno wapumbwa eva tere ulikoni maondo tutoingida ashike kapeno nweku dite opoye ekukulile oshafafana nongeshe faili meholamo ihoetike kovano ile koshiwana onongeshe fa yapumbwa kukaraya kovano okupitiramo Eagle FM otuna emitoda njuka okukwetera oipindi konu kondado inawa nuneudo otukwetera o special ngetashake ngeshe fa omarudi dayo loka opone ushendi fenawa nokumona oijamo ili nawa ningepata fanona monika ko Eagle FM onora etatu imwe mbali heali nola natu heali mbali no heali ile komberewa nora hetatu natu mbali o hetatu batatu o mafelane Eagle FM the eye.
Eagle FM lets you express your constitutional rights of freedom of expression without fear of favor.
This is actually, to put it mildly, an economic scandal.
My friend, why do you seem so worried?
Ace, I am planning an event for next weekend, and I don't know how to best get people to hear about it.
Simon, don't worry about those small things. Contact Eagle FM today. Eagle FM has a dedicated team that can travel anywhere countrywide to broadcast live at any event, such as a promotion, organizational launch, anniversary, wedding, funeral, political or traditional and church events, and basically any event that you wish to broadcast on a national level. Call them now and talk to Monica at 081 270 3727 or the office number 083 2888 400. Eagle FM, the eye.
No matter where you are, if you have a mobile device, you can tune into Namibia's #1 talk radio station by downloading the Eagle FM app on the Google Play Store or on the Apple App Store. Download the Eagle FM app to tune into live Eagle FM programming or to listen to podcasts